All right. We are live. Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Weathers. I'm here with my dear friend, Angela MacLeod. And
Hi,
we're
Bob.
here tonight with our Friday night installment of your Vitality Project, where we take posts from our daily posts. And Angela, you and I get to unpack them, and I always enjoy this. So thank you for joining me, Angela.
You're welcome. Good to be here with you, Bob.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Our topic tonight is kind of an odd wording, but I think we can unpack it. Our topic is, how do we identify our what ifs? And these what ifs are worries that all of us carry around. What if this happens? What if that happens? It's really the substance of our anxiety about worrying about future events. And I'm happy to go with that wherever we do tonight, Angela. But as we were just talking for a couple of minutes earlier, is that we're looking at the impact of how we approach stressful events in our lives. That the how we do that sometimes is even more detrimental or more impactful than what the actual event or stressor is. And so we're kind of focusing on the hows as opposed to the whats, I guess. And one of the hows is that if I'm facing something that is worrisome or challenging or undesirable or stressful, is that how I process that radically affects my body, as including my brain. And that if we can find skillful means to manage, among other things, our worries, or what we're calling our what ifs, that could stand us in good stead as we're trying to work on being free of reflexes that send us back into enslavement to addictive behaviors, whether it be compulsive behaviors, addiction to substances, or even sometimes attitudes like resentment or frustration. So that's our topic, is how to identify our what ifs. And I'd love to see where we go, if that's okay, Angela. And I want to invite you to remark in any way, kind of as we kick off the content of tonight's conversation.
Yeah. Good topic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. How we respond. Well, it always seems to me like, as I go through my life, that the people and the events and the circumstances that are happening are causing how I feel and how I think. I mean, that is sort of, that's normal for me.
Yeah.
And it is changing, because as I become more aware of an understanding that just what you were saying, that it's how I respond to the circumstances and the situations in my life is what I really have choice and power over, how I respond. And it isn't just that simple either, because I've understood that for quite a while, for numbers of years. And I realized that just understanding something like that doesn't immediately translate into how I live and how I behave. And that can be very humbling, as I watch myself over and over again act out of reflex to situations and to people, act in ways, say things, do things, and of course addiction is part of that. That's sort of a reflex, a reaction to not being able to control situations and how I feel. And so therefore a drink or a behavior it actually does affect how I feel inside. So just in that, just to acknowledge that, note that why it can be so such a trap is that there is an immediate response in our bodies, in our physiology, in how we feel and how we think. And of course, it also has many, many negative results as well, and becomes going down the rabbit hole, as you said earlier in the post. So I have become really pretty fascinated with this whole process, and I think that's a good key word, that it's a process of first recognizing that I am acting out of a reflex, that it isn't necessarily good thinking to just blurt something out, in response to what somebody else is doing or saying, or to withdraw and hide from situations that are overwhelming to me. But then as a process, then comes, well, what can I do instead? And of course, I'm very interested in nervous system, and noticing how much my nervous system is kind of at the basis of a lot of this, or to look through the lens of what's happening in my nervous system. So when I have this reflexive reaction to situations in my life that is really not the most beneficial way to behave, it's usually based in my amygdala, my limbic system, or in other words, my more primitive survival brain. And it is more of a reflex, almost something that I can't, that it appears that I can't control it. It just happens. But good news is that I can choose to respond to that differently. And what I have been, actually, this is my big project right now, is really exploring all these different ways that we can shift our nervous system. And by doing that, can come to a different perspective, can come from a different place inside, in response to the circumstances and the world around, the people, the issues, the what ifs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love your very literate kind of opening articulation of all of this. It's really quite freeing, isn't it? I really think what we're talking about is such a foundational realization. I love how you put it too, is that it's one thing to kind of have a cognitive understanding or appreciation. It's another thing to be able to embody it, to live it in our lives, but to realize that at least for me, and you and I have talked about this more personally, Angela, over the years, there's plenty of unpleasant things that I wouldn't ask for in my life. You and I have just lost a dear friend who's recently passed away, and there's sadness and sorrow and missing in all of that. But as you and I were talking earlier today, there can also be beauty in and deep gratitude in all the years that we had with Logan in our life. And I'm thinking of the beauty of your dancing performance in honor of Logan, that and put it up on YouTube to really acknowledge his impact and share that with others. That's a beautiful kind of alchemical transformation of what some people would only see as darkness, to be pushed away or to be fixed. And I didn't feel like that you were doing that in the least. It's like embracing that and moving through that. And it's not to somehow be in denial of pain and suffering, but it's to give pain and suffering a bigger container so that we can breathe and literally move. And I find freedom in that, to think that circumstances don't have to dictate my peace of mind. I think that circumstances impact my being content or happy in any moment, but I think there's a way to be sad, like you and I have been sad with Logan together, and still find peace underneath that. I feel that, and I think that you do too. Came through so strongly in your artistic presentation of it in your dance. And so I really feel like that I feel like this is one of those keys. I wrote it in one of the posts this week, that I think that the key to sobriety, I stated it strongly, and I never state anything this definitively, but I think the key to sobriety is our finding skillful means to move through life as it is. And
I remember reading that and noticing how strongly you put that.
Yeah, thank you. You know me well, and you know that I'm not one for making absolute statements. But I felt so deeply the bedrock nature of what you just shared, and it was manifest in that statement, is that if we can find a way to move through this, even the most extreme circumstances, and God forbid that any of us would be in those any more than is absolutely given us. But having said that, that we have the freedom to navigate with dignity and with grace, and I think with peace.
Yeah, I like that choice of the word container. As you were referring to the dance that I did in honor of Logan, our friend. For me, one of the ways that I can process grief is by giving it a bigger container, literally a space to move my body with the feelings that are coming up. because I'm a dancer and a choreographer, it's natural for me to not so much make it into a performance piece, but to allow my creative self to engage with the grief. So the container is the literal space, and the part, it's like I draw forth the part of me that's loving, that remembers Logan, that is creative, and the grief can be with that. And then moving them at the same time. And when I did that dance piece, I really didn't know if I would share it. You know, I just wanted to do it for Logan, for myself, and to give those feelings space. And then afterwards I thought, okay, I think I can share this with other people. And because it's very private, you know, grief and some of these feelings, I don't know sometimes what's going to come up. You know, I may not want to share it with the world. But that key piece, between the initial feelings, the first ways that emotions arise, sometimes the grief can be, my first reaction to grief might be, this is way too much. I can't stand to feel this.
Yeah.
You know, or anger, or whatever the various things are that come up in life. And then, so there's the event, the thing that happened, and there's the reflex. And sometimes it seems like event reflex, like there's no space in between anything. And so I think the skill set that we're talking about has to do with carving bigger space to allow a process. Now it can be different, many different ways. Doesn't have to be a dance, but allowing a process to emerge within, whether it's expressing feelings. For me, it can also be shifting out of that frenzied fight or flight nervous system mode, or the collapse nervous system mode where I just shut down, to finding that kind of space in between where I feel present, calm, creative, and then allowing that to be a process that then I might make a response to you or to other people in my life, or I might make a choice as to what I'm going to do next. So instead of there being event, reflex, and then action, you know, it's like creating more space for these other skills to come forward. And yeah, that's what I was getting from your readings, or from the post that you posted this week. And the what ifs, you know, how do we deal with the what ifs, is give them a bigger container and do something different with them.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I'm really taking in what you're saying, really appreciating. In fact, I want you to know, Angela, that as I'm listening to you in just this conversation, which is spontaneous movement between us, founded in lots of years of lots of spontaneous, you know, sharing and disclosure and journeys together, is that what I've been using in the posts, and I working on some for the weekend, even this coming the next few days, I'm using mindful awareness exercises again and again, and so much I'm even kind of tongue-in-cheek, like, guess what we're doing next, you guys? And what hasn't occurred to me, and I will make it explicit, if not in these next few posts as I move forward, is that the mindful awareness exercise, which I'm just suggesting just the most basic, as you know, awareness of the breath exercise, that could become a metaphor for whatever one would do to fill the space. And I've never made that explicit, even in my own thoughts, until I'm listening to you right now. And I want to make that explicit in the writings. Let me give you an example. The last few days, as you know, Logan was a classical music buff. I found myself yesterday really immersed through the day, you know, early in the morning, listening to some of his favorite composers. He loved Gustav Mahler. I was listening to Gustav Mahler in the morning. I was very touched. Logan was very near. He also loved Pyotr Tchaikovsky, and so I was listening to Tchaikovsky. And then last night, at the end of the day, it was a long day. I felt really moved. I asked Colleen if I could have space to compose, and I composed a piece of music last night. And it literally wasn't Mahler-esque or Tchaikovsky-esque. it was actually, I titled the piece Ravel after Maurice Ravel, but anybody that knows Ravel would not listen to that piece and go, oh, that sounds just like Maurice Ravel. It was inspired by kind of all of that. And it was coming through me. And so it wasn't like programmatic any more than your dance was like, well, I'm doing this to get from point A to point B. It wasn't that any more than last night's music. All I know is at the end of last evening, I completed the piece last night. It's just a very simple piano solo that I did. But it got it. It got right at this. And I put it up on SoundCloud. I didn't put any reference to Logan in it. It's it's funny, you have to trust your spirit. And I loved what you wrote on YouTube, your dedication to Logan, very touching to me. And I will revisit or not this piece with Logan. I think it was enough that it came through me. And you want to talk about space? I went to bed last night. I was actually a smaller container at the end of my day than at the end of the night when I composed this music. Wow, Bob just spent 2 or 3 hours composing a piece of music after a lengthy day. No, I was actually more spacious last night. And I'm just wanting to bear witness to the truth of what you're saying. And I love how you're talking about this, how to identify our what ifs. Well, how about if we do that in the context of spaciousness? Yeah, thank you. I really want to encourage anybody who's listening, as well as in future posts, that if I don't say it, let's presume it. That when I say, here's a 5-minute exercise, it could be a dance, a composition, a gardening, a cooking. It could be anything. I think of all of those as art forms, as creative self-expression, and what that does to our souls to open up a space for us to feel, to be joyous, to be sorrowful, to cry, all of that. I think it's, even to imagine to host worries. What would it be like to host worries? In fact, the exercises this week, including this one on what ifs, is let's get out our worries on paper, which itself is an intervention. Let's at least get ourselves reasonably conscious and get it out concretely. And then the very next exercise is, what would it be like to dance or drum or compose or breathe around our what ifs? And the assumption here is that with practice, we can actually get to where we can cultivate spaciousness. I don't want to say on command, because I really think that it's as much the realm of the gods as it is the realm of us humans, but we can certainly participate in the muse's gifts to us. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, I took it that way, but I know you well, and I, when I was doing some of the practices that you posted, the 5-minute mindfulness of the breath. Actually, I have to admit, there was a part of me that goes, "Oh, I don't want to do that again." To be honest, I
think it's understandable. Do we have to do one more blankety blank mindfulness exercise? We're just gonna pop.
Yeah. Well, actually, I know what you were going for there, and so for me, in that moment when that came up, that was kind of like my inner child, and it was like, oh, well, I think I need to go swing for a few minutes. So, but I know that is a way for me to be mindful, is to kind of release the energy in my body a little bit, intentionally choosing that activity for that purpose. It wasn't just, oh, I don't want to do it, and then shut down, and I'm not going to do the exercise. It was, well, I'm going to find a way that my inner child wants to do this, or my creative dancer wants to do this.
That's beautiful. That's the point. You remind me of a story that I've told you in the past. My dearest long-term friend Keith from graduate school, after about 10 years of watching me try to corral my energies as a drummer and as an athlete into sitting with my legs crossed on a mat and meditating, he came up to me one day, and he just, in fact, I was confiding him, gosh darn it, Keith, I have such a hard time keeping momentum with my meditation practice. And he just looked at me dumbfounded and a little bit patronizingly, and I think I earned it. He said, Bob, music is your meditation, damn it. Music is your meditation. I've never forgotten that. And last night's Ravel composition, that was mindfulness. Your dance our swinging together, all of that is that. So let's have a very expansive notion of what it is to be mindful. I've come to substitute. I got the term cultivating your art form from the Jungian analyst James Hillman at the very first conference I ever heard him speak at 35 years ago. He said, "What is the key to becoming?" Somebody asked him, "What's the key to becoming an effective psychotherapist, Dr. Hillman?" And he said without even hesitation, he says, "Cultivate your art form." And he qualified it. He said, "By your art form, I include," and he went down a list of every imaginable form that you can imagine, most of which aren't associated with formal art. Dance is, and music is, but he went down a list of all kinds of things. And I've come more recently to substitute or maybe use both terms is I just think of creative self-expression is what Dr. Hillman was talking about. I think it's what we're talking about with mindful awareness exercises. Whatever opens up your soul to express itself creatively, that's the pearl of great price.
Yeah. That reminds me of my dear friend Kenneth, who he had this phrase when he was teaching breathing work, and he had this phrase, we're going to find what is your home base, where you feel safe. And so he was asking us to do some pretty intensive breathing work that could make you feel kind of ungrounded or, maybe triggering you in some way. But he was really good at helping you also first establishing that home base. And I almost think of the mindfulness or for me, dance or whatever it is. Where is it that your home base where you feel safe, most in touch with yourself, present?
Beautiful.
Could be the same put in place of the 5-minute breathing mindfulness. I mean, they all have the same goal and purpose.
Yeah. Thank you for that gift from Kenneth, and I might well quote him with real appreciation and honor. That's a beautiful thing. Let's find our home base. Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah. I remember years ago, this is 45 years ago, reading the Christian psychiatrist Paul Tournier. He was French, and he had a book translated in English, and it caught my eye. This is very early. I think this is undoubted. It's before I started studying psychology, so it's almost 45 years ago. The book was simply called, it was translated into English, A Place for You. And while he was Christian, he wasn't Christian in a narrow sense. I think he was looking at, let's find a home base. And certainly spiritually he was speaking of, but I remember it being very appealing to me, and it stayed with me over all the years, this home base idea, a place for you. What is your place or places, Angela? What are my places? And let's find a way to cultivate a safe security. What does Stu Johnson call it? A safe harbor and a secure base. Safe harbor and a secure base. Yeah, that's good. Angela, we have just a minute or two, and I want to give you the last word on tonight. If anything comes to mind, I just want to invite you.
Well, what comes to mind is the next time you notice yourself in that worried what if, let's see if, like, this could be an invitation based on what Bob and I have just been talking about. If you can find a home base for yourself, whatever that is, whether it's 5 minutes of mindfulness of the breath or swinging on the swing outside or hugging your cat or whatever, and then practice, because I really like this idea of practice. So the idea would be that then it becomes more of an automatic response. The next time the what if comes up and the worry mind comes up, that we go to our home base. We take a little time out and go to the home base, then look at that what if, or whatever the circumstance is that's stressful, from a different perspective, from that home base place.
Beautiful. Articulated just beautifully. Thank you so much for amplifying this material in the way that you do. I really appreciate your skills and the depth of your being, dear Angela.
Yeah, well, I really love what you offer to the world, and it's right here with you.
Thank you. I feel your presence. Well, I wish you a wonderfully home-based weekend, my dear. I really do. And I wish all of our listeners that same thing. I hope that we can put into practice what we're talking about. I even like this last point that you made of building it in gradually and gently, kindly with ourselves. but beginning to develop habits of
Mhm.
rooting ourselves in this home base. And we'll be following this over the next several posts. I know this is what we're working, and we're working it again and again. You know, as I've shared with you before, my dear friend Jim says, all that is repetitious is not necessarily redundant.
Oh, I
And I'm
love that.
right
Yeah.
on the edge of risking redundancy, but I'm doing it with intentionality, repetition to build in the experience. You know this from dance, and I know this from drumming. You work something, you work something, you work something repetitively until then you can begin to create nuance and improvisation off of that. It's in that spirit that we would create when we're in a home-based state of mind,
Yeah.
a kind of almost muscle memory of the soul, so that when we're faced with stressful or undesired circumstances, we can rely on what we know organismically deep inside ourselves. And it's to that end that we're repeating things.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah, all right, my dear. Well, I have to quote this. It's just, it came across my mind. T.S. Eliot says this in the Four Quartets. He says, he's right in the middle of one of his poems. He says, "You say I'm repeating something I have said before. I shall repeat what I have said before. Shall I repeat what I said before?" I always get a kick on that when I come across it, because he's
I love
saying the
that.
same thing, you know. It's like, yeah, let's just keep working this. Thank you for working this really rich material with me these Friday nights. We'll be back together next Friday night, everybody, with Angela. And just blessings to you, dear Angela, and all of our listeners. Yeah.
Thank
Have a
you.
good evening, good weekend.
Okay.
I'll see you again soon. Good night,
Okay, bye-bye.
everybody. Bye-bye.